Think about the last time you couldn't get out of bed. Not tired, not lazy, just stuck. The shower felt impossible. Your phone kept buzzing and you let it. Or maybe it wasn't you. Maybe it was someone you love and you watched them disappear into a version of themselves you didn't recognize, and nothing you said reached them. For the next half hour, I'd like to show you what is actually happening inside the brain when this happens. Not metaphors, not chemicals out of balance, the actual circuit. We can point to it, we can measure it, and increasingly, we can change it. The story comes from a book by Edmund T, a neuroscientist at Oxford who has spent 50 years recording from single neurons while monkeys eat, drink, and lose what they expected to get. The strange and hopeful thing he found is that depression, the heaviest mood state our species can fall into, may be, in a very precise sense, your brain getting stuck in a loop, in a very specific patch of cortex about the size of your thumbnail. Let me show you. Here's the central idea. It comes from Edmund T, and I'm going to put it on screen because once you have it, everything else in this video, every brain region, every experiment, every treatment will fall into place. Emotions are brain states, elicited by rewards and punishers. That's it. That's the whole theory. A reward is anything you would work to get. A punisher is anything you would work to avoid. And an emotion is what your brain produces, computes, feels, when one of those rewards or punishers is delivered, withheld, threatened, or taken away. Joy is what it feels like to get a reward you wanted. Sadness is what it feels like to lose one. Anger, fear, relief, longing, grief. Every emotion is a particular relationship between you and a reward or a punisher. This sounds almost too simple. It isn't. It's actually a very strong claim, because it means we can predict which situations produce which feelings just by asking what reward, what punisher, and what just happened to it. Which means it gives us a map. And a map is exactly what we need to understand what goes wrong in depression. So what exactly counts as a reward? Some of it is obvious. Sweet taste when you're hungry. Salt when your body needs it. The umami of a good broth. Warm touch on cold skin. Sex. A baby's smile. A safe place to sleep. But Roll's list is much longer and stranger than people usually realize. Your genes have wired in a reward signal for the sight of an open horizon, solving a hard puzzle, reading another person's mind, status, reputation, being part of a group, being treated fairly, being able to control your own actions, even play, even exercise, even in the right dose, danger. Each of these is a primary reinforcer, something your nervous system was born to find rewarding, no learning required. They are the receipts your genes wrote, encoding what your ancestors needed to survive and reproduce. And the punishers, pain, bitter taste, putrid odor, a snake, a threatening face, a warning cry, being rejected by your group, those are the receipts in the other direction. Things that, on average, killed your ancestors' chances. Your whole emotional life is, in some sense, the bookkeeping that your brain does as these rewards and punishers come and go. Now we can be precise about depression. Here's the move that, once you see it, you can't unsee. Take any reward in your life, a favorite food, a person you love, a paycheck. Now imagine 4 different things can happen to it. 1, you get it. That's joy, pleasure, ecstasy if the reward is big enough. 2, you don't get it, and you can do something about it. Maybe the food's late, so you complain. Maybe you got passed over for a promotion, so you push back. That's anger, frustration, rage. 3, and this is the one that matters for the rest of the video. You don't get it, and there's nothing you can do. The person you love is gone. The job is gone. The pregnancy ended. The friendship ended. The future you've been picturing, gone. That, in Roll's framework, is sadness, grief, and if it doesn't resolve, depression. The same circuit, the same neurons, the same brain machinery, handling the loss of an expected reward when there's no action that brings it back. Notice what depression is not in this picture. It's not a chemical imbalance. It's not weakness. It's a brain doing exactly what evolution built it to do, flagging that something important has been lost, except the flag won't come down. The rest of this video is about why the flag gets stuck up and what makes it come down. A quick detour because there is a famous old theory of emotion that is still in textbooks and we need to clear it out of the way. William James, in 1884, proposed that you don't run from the bear because you're afraid. You're afraid because you ran. First, the body reacts, heart pounding, legs sprinting, and then your brain feels the body and decides, aha, this must be fear. It's a beautiful idea. It is also wrong, or at least deeply incomplete. Here's the problem. James's theory tells you what comes after the bear, but it tells you nothing about why the bear is scary in the first place, and not, say, a coffee cup. Some stimulus had to be flagged as threat before your heart could pound at all. Something had to make the body run before your brain could observe the running. That something, the thing that decides which sights and sounds and smells trigger which body reactions, is the part of the brain that's actually doing the work. It's the part that holds the map of rewards and punishers. Your racing heart is a consequence of fear. It is not the fear itself. The fear is upstream. Now let's find out where, upstream, that fear actually lies. One more big idea before we dive into the cortex, because this one explains why you have emotions at all. Imagine you're a gene. Your only job is to write instructions for the body you'll live inside. You have a hard problem. You don't know what the world will look like when that body is born. You can't predict the climate, the predators, the food, the social situation. You have two options. You can hard-code every single behavior. Pull your hand from heat, attack rivals, run from snakes, like an old reflex. That's fast, but it's brittle. If the world changes, your robot body fails. Or, and this is the trick evolution actually used, you can write a much shorter set of instructions. You don't specify the behavior, you specify the goal. Sweet things, good. Loud noises, bad. The face of your mate, good. The face of a stranger looking angry, bad. Now the body is free to learn whatever actions get it to the good things and away from the bad things. The same gene, the same goal, works in a forest, on a savanna, or in Manhattan. That is what emotions are for. They are the way your genes prepaid the ticket for what to want, while leaving the actions completely up to you. Richard Dawkins called the gene selfish. Rolls just adds, but it's a clever selfish. It specifies the goal, not the move. All of which is to say, your emotions are not random. They are a list of things written in your DNA that you are designed to care about. Depression, when it comes, is what happens when something on that list gets taken. Now let's open the skull and find the actual circuit. Rolls organizes the brain's emotional machinery into 3 tiers, 3 jobs done by 3 different sets of cortex in a strict order. Tier 1. What is it? Pure recognition. This is the chocolate bar. This is your mother's face. This is a sour taste. This is the sound of breaking glass. No judgment, no feeling, just identification. Tier 2. Is it good or bad? This is where the chocolate becomes pleasant, the face becomes loved. The sour taste becomes unpleasant. The breaking glass becomes alarming. Reward and punishment value get attached to the recognized thing. Tier 3. What should I do about it? Choose between options. Decide. Act. 3 steps. What? Then value. Then action. Keep this picture in your head. The rest of the video is mostly about Tier 2 because that's where everything interesting about emotion and everything broken in depression happens. A quick look at Tier 1, so we know what we're walking past. You look at a chocolate bar. The light hits your retina. In your visual cortex at the back of your head, the image gets passed through region after region, V1, V2, V4, on into the inferior temporal cortex on the side of your head. By the time the signal arrives at the front edge of that pathway, something remarkable has happened. Some of the neurons there will fire for chocolate bar, not for a particular pixel pattern, not for a particular angle, not for a particular size. They will fire for the chocolate bar whether it's near or far, whether you're looking down on it or up at it, whether it's whole or partly hidden behind your coffee cup. That is what neuroscientists call an invariant representation. The brain has worked very hard to recognize the thing regardless of its specific appearance. Same story in your taste cortex. Some neurons there fire for sweet, cleanly, regardless of whether you're hungry or full. They just report the chemistry. Notice what isn't happening yet. None of these neurons care if you want the chocolate. None of them know it's good for you or bad for you or your favorite or your least. They are pure what detectors. Value comes next. This is the most important slide in the whole video. If you only remember one piece of anatomy, remember this one. Sit 2 fingers behind your eyebrows, on the inside of your skull. Right there, on the underside of your frontal lobe, sits a region called the orbitofrontal cortex, roughly the size of a postcard, folded once. And this postcard is split in 2. Down the middle, closer to the midline of your brain, runs the medial orbitofrontal cortex. This is the reward map. When a sip of wine tastes good, when your friend's voice makes you smile, when you win at something, when a soft fabric feels nice against your hand, neurons in the medial orbitofrontal cortex light up. The pleasanter the experience, the brighter the activity. And then, on the outer wings of that same postcard, the parts that sit further from the midline, runs the lateral orbitofrontal cortex. This is the non-reward map, the punishment map. When a sip of wine is corked, when your friend gives you the cold shoulder, when you lose at something, when you reach for the prize and it isn't there, neurons in the lateral orbitofrontal cortex light up. 1 brain region, 2 halves. One says yes, the other says no. And the 2 halves talk to each other. They tend to inhibit each other. When one is loud, the other is quiet. When the reward map is firing brightly, the non-reward map is quiet, and you feel good. When the non-reward map is firing brightly, the reward map is suppressed, and you feel awful. Hold this image. We are going to spend the rest of the video on what happens when one of these 2 maps, the lateral one, gets stuck on loud. Before we get to depression, I want to show you one experiment that demonstrates how alive the reward map really is. Because once you see this, the rest stops being abstract. It's about something you have absolutely felt. You finish a big meal. You're full. You couldn't eat another bite of steak. Couldn't even look at it. And yet, somehow, dessert arrives, and there's space. This is a real thing. Neuroscientists call it sensory-specific satiety, and Edmund T is one of the people who discovered it. Here's what's happening. While you ate the steak, neurons in your orbitofrontal cortex that fire for savory protein gradually quieted down. Not because steak suddenly stopped being food, but because your brain's reward map for steak specifically was being updated in real time. After enough steak, those neurons go silent. The reward for that flavor is gone. But the neurons that fire for sweet, for cake, For ice cream, they weren't being used. They're still wide awake. They will respond just as strongly to dessert as if you hadn't eaten anything at all. Your stomach is full. Your reward map isn't. The point is not dessert is sneaky. The point is that the reward map is dynamic. It updates. It pays attention. It gets bored. And, crucial for what's coming, it can be biased by experience, by mood, by other parts of your brain talking down to it. Now hold that idea. The reward map can be biased, because in depression, it will be. 3 more regions briefly, because their names come up everywhere and you should know what they actually do. First, the amygdala. 2 small almond-shaped clusters, deep in your temporal lobes, one on each side. You've probably heard the amygdala is the fear center. That is roughly true and very incomplete. The amygdala flags emotional salience, meaning this is important, brain. Pay attention. For things that have been emotionally important in your past. It's a learning system, tuned to what mattered. Second, the anterior cingulate cortex, a stripe of cortex curving above the corpus callosum. Its job is to tie actions to outcomes. When I do X, I get Y. If you want to learn how to get a particular reward, this region is doing the bookkeeping. And third, dopamine, possibly the most misunderstood molecule in popular science. Dopamine is not the pleasure chemical. It does not make you feel good. What dopamine neurons actually signal is surprise, specifically reward prediction error. When something good happens that you didn't expect, dopamine spikes. When something good you expected fails to arrive, dopamine drops. It teaches your brain what to predict next time. 3 systems. Salience, action to outcome, prediction error, stacked on top of the reward map we just met. Together, this is the apparatus that runs your emotional life until something in it gets stuck. Here is one more experiment from Roll's lab. It is small, it is weird, and it is going to matter enormously when we talk about treatment. Take a participant, put them in a brain scanner, pipe a particular smell, a creamy, buttery odor, under their nose. Watch the orbitofrontal cortex respond. Then, on the next trial, exactly the same smell, but this time, on the screen in front of them, you display 2 words, rich and luxurious. The orbitofrontal cortex fires more strongly. The same molecules, the same nose, but the cortex now reads the experience as more pleasant. Run the trial again. Same smell. But now the words on screen read, vegetable fat. The orbitofrontal cortex fires less. Nothing about the chemistry changed. What changed was the words. The language system, sitting in another part of the brain, sent signals down to the orbitofrontal cortex and rewrote, in real time, how rewarding the smell was. Top down, from thought to feeling. Your reward map is not a sensor. It is a conversation between the bottom-up chemistry of the world and the top-down narrative of your thinking brain. And that means, for better and for worse, what you think, and especially what you keep telling yourself, will literally change what you feel. Hold this thought. It is the seed of depression. It is also the seed of every effective psychological treatment we'll talk about. A short interlude on decision-making, because to understand how a brain gets stuck, we first need to understand how a brain gets unstuck. In the Middle Ages, a philosopher named Jean Buridan posed a puzzle. Imagine a donkey standing exactly halfway between 2 identical, equally delicious piles of hay. Pure reason cannot tell the donkey which pile to walk to first. They're identical. There is no rational basis for choosing one over the other. So, does the donkey starve? Obviously not. Real donkeys eat, which means real brains have some mechanism for breaking ties, for choosing one option over an equally good one, quickly and definitively. How that mechanism works, it turns out, is the same machinery that, when it misfires, can leave you ruminating in bed at 3 a.m. Picture two groups of neurons in your cortex. Call them Pool A and Pool B. Pool A votes for one option, say the left pile of hay. Pool B votes for the other. The neurons within Pool A excite each other. The more of them that are firing, the more they push their neighbors to fire too. Same inside Pool B. And this is the key piece. Pool A and Pool B inhibit each other. The louder A gets, the more it shouts down B, and vice versa. Now apply some inputs. The donkey sees both piles of hay. Both pools start to receive evidence. They both creep up in activity, more or less together. But by sheer chance, and we'll come back to this, Pool A happens to fire one more spike than Pool B in some particular instant. That extra spike excites Pool A's neighbors a little more, which inhibits Pool B a little more. Pool A pulls ahead. The lead grows. The lead grows faster. And within a fraction of a second, Pool A is at full firing and Pool B is silent. A choice has been made. The donkey walks to the left pile. Picture this as a landscape with two valleys. The brain's activity is a ball rolling across that landscape. When the ball falls into the left valley, you've chosen left. When it falls into the right valley, you've chosen right. The valley is what neuroscientists call an attractor state, a stable pattern that the network falls into and gets locked into until something kicks it out. And here's the thing that's going to matter for depression. Not every attractor is a useful one. You can have valleys in this landscape that you really do not want to fall into. And once you've fallen in, getting back out is hard. Because that's what an attractor is. It attracts. It holds. I owe you that footnote about chance. Your neurons don't fire on a clean clock. Each spike happens at a slightly random moment. Two neurons receiving exactly the same input won't fire at exactly the same time. There's a small but real element of randomness baked into the wiring. This drove physicists crazy for years. It looks like a bug. Surely a well-engineered brain should be deterministic, predictable, repeatable. But Rolz's colleague Gustavo Deco and many others working on this have shown that the noise is a feature. It's what breaks symmetry. It's how the donkey decides. It's how, when you face an open-ended problem, your brain can stumble onto solutions it wasn't trained to find. It's how creativity gets a foothold. Some philosophers even suggest it's where the felt sense of free will lies. Without noise, the donkey starves. With noise, the donkey eats. But, and this is the part you need to take into the next act, that same noise can sometimes flip you into the wrong basin. It can kick the activity ball into an attractor state that, in a healthy brain, you would never have ended up in. And once you're in, well, let's go to chapter 4. Before the science, a few numbers, so we know what we're talking about. The World Health Organization ranks major depression as the single leading cause of years of life lived with disability anywhere in the world. Not heart disease, not back pain, depression. Between 8 and 12% of people will meet the diagnostic criteria for major depressive disorder at some point in their lives. In women, the rate is roughly double the rate in men. After childbirth, between 10 and 15% of mothers experience postpartum depression. The economic cost in Europe alone in 2013 was estimated at 617 billion euros a year. Most of that not in healthcare, but in lost productivity, absenteeism, and disability payments. That number has only risen since. And those are the visible costs. The invisible ones. What depression does to a marriage, to a parent, to a career, to a life, don't show up on any spreadsheet. So whatever the brain mechanism is, it had better explain something this widespread, something this old, something this human. Here's the list of things that the research tells us most reliably trigger a depressive episode. The death of someone you love. The end of a marriage, the end of a job you cared about, a romantic rejection, the birth of a child in some women, a long stretch of loneliness, a long stretch of stress with no end in sight, a serious illness, a traumatic injury, a defeat in a status hierarchy you've been competing in, even the season, the short days of winter for some. Look at this list and ask, what do they have in common? Each one of them is a loss of an expected reward. A loved one is gone. The reward of that bond is gone. A job is gone. The rewards of structure, status, income, purpose are gone. A relationship ends. The reward of pair bonding is gone. A child is born, and the new mother's hormones rearrange around an enormous shift in reward priorities. Long days of social isolation, the daily reward of social contact, missing. Even the seasonal version of depression, the dark winter months, likely involves the loss of a different reward. Bright morning light, which your brain treats, in some ways, as its own kind of reward signal. Rawls's theory says, every trigger on this list is the same brain event, dressed up in different clothing. An expected reward, gone, and the alarm in your lateral orbitofrontal cortex, firing. Now let's see the actual alarm. 1983. A lab in Oxford. A monkey is sitting in front of a screen, learning to associate a blue square with a sip of juice. The experimenters, Simon Thorpe, Edmund Rolls, Stephen Madison, have a recording electrode inside a small region on the underside of the frontal lobe, called the lateral orbitofrontal cortex, roughly here behind your eye sockets, on the outside. For 100 trials, blue square means juice. The monkey learns it. The neuron does nothing special. It just sits there at its baseline. Then they flip it. Now the blue square delivers nothing. No juice. And the neuron, this one specific neuron, goes off like an alarm. Not for half a second. Not for a second. It keeps firing for many seconds after the missed reward. Long after the trial is over, the neuron is still burning, holding a memory in its sustained activity, repeating to the rest of the brain, the thing you expected didn't come. The thing you expected didn't come. The thing you expected didn't come. This is what neuroscientists call an attractor state, when a network of neurons settles into a stable, self-sustaining pattern of firing. The neurons keep exciting each other in a loop, and the loop doesn't want to let go. In the lateral orbitofrontal cortex, this attractor's job is to remember, I was promised something, I didn't get it. Change behavior. In a healthy monkey, the loop quiets after a few seconds, and life moves on. Now imagine a brain where it doesn't.
Here's Rawls' theory of depression. Once you see it, the rest of the story falls into place. You have your lateral orbitofrontal cortex on one side. That's the alarm we just met, the patch that lights up when an expected reward doesn't arrive. And on the other side, you have your language and planning networks, the part of you that thinks in sentences, the narrator in your head. These two regions are connected. They have to be. Of course, the alarm needs to tell the narrator, hey, something went wrong, let's think about it. Normally, the narrator listens, considers, plans, and the alarm quiets down. But the connection runs both ways. The narrator can also send signals back to the alarm. And here is the trap. Imagine the alarm fires because of something real, a death, a breakup, a failure. The narrator picks it up, starts thinking about it, replays it, plans what could have been different. Every time the narrator dwells on the loss, the language network sends a signal back down to the alarm, and the alarm fires again, which sends a fresh wave back up to the narrator, which thinks about it again, which fires the alarm again. You have just stumbled into a self-sustaining loop, a systems-level attractor, two regions of cortex locked in a conversation that won't let either of them stop. This is what rumination is mechanically. This is what people mean when they say they can't turn it off. Their brain is, in a very literal way, refusing to drop out of an attractor state. And this is the painful part. Humans are uniquely vulnerable to this trap because no other animal has a language system this powerful. A monkey's alarm fires for a few seconds and stops. Yours can fire for months because every time you think the sentence "I lost them," you keep the circuit warm. Rawls calls this the non-reward attractor theory of depression. It explains a lot. It predicts a lot. And as you'll see in a moment, it tells us exactly what every effective treatment for depression is doing. They are all, in different ways, trying to knock the loop loose.
In 2016, Rawls and his collaborator Wei Cheng put 909 people into MRI scanners, 421 with diagnosed major depressive disorder, 488 controls. They weren't looking at any single brain region. They were measuring functional connectivity, how strongly different regions of the brain talk to each other while a person is just lying quietly in the scanner. Brain-wide, voxel by voxel. Here is what they found, and it matched the theory almost surgically. The lateral orbitofrontal cortex, the non-reward map, was talking more than usual to two specific regions in depressed brains: the angular gyrus, a hub of the language system, and the precuneus, a region central to your sense of self. The non-reward map was overconnected to the parts of your brain that narrate, and to the parts of your brain that hold the I. Translation: in depression, the alarm is wired more tightly into the voice that tells your story, and more tightly into the part of your brain that says me. Meanwhile, the medial orbitofrontal cortex, the reward map, was talking less than usual to your hippocampus, the memory hub. Translation: in depression, your reward map is more cut off from your store of happy memories. You literally have a harder time remembering being happy. One scan. Two changes in opposite directions. Both predicted by the theory. Both visible in 900 brains. And when you ran the same analysis on a totally separate group of people in the United States who had simply scored high on a depression questionnaire, you found the same pattern. The theory generalized. Now we get to the practical payoff. Because the theory we just built doesn't just describe depression, it quietly explains every effective treatment we have. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, Prozac, sertraline, the SSRI family. These take 3 to 6 weeks to work. They gradually nudge the brain's chemistry toward weighting positive stimuli more heavily, negative stimuli less, slowly tipping the reciprocal balance between the reward map and the non-reward map. Translation: they help the alarm get quieter over weeks. Ketamine, at a low dose, given as an infusion, effects in hours, not weeks. Ketamine blocks NMDA receptors, exactly the receptors that hold an attractor in its high-firing state, by feeding the neuron's own outputs back to themselves. Translation: ketamine, more or less, kicks the activity ball out of the non-reward basin. The loop loses its grip. Transcranial magnetic stimulation, aimed at the lateral orbitofrontal cortex, a magnetic field on the outside of the skull, disrupting the firing of the non-reward map directly. Early trials, since the Rawls theory was published, are showing this works. Translation: a different physical way of breaking the attractor. Cognitive behavioral therapy. Years of clinical evidence, no scanner needed. CBT works by teaching you to interrupt the ruminating loop, to fill the language channel with something other than the loss, to direct your attention to rewards that are still here. Translation: it uses the top-down conversation we saw with the cream odorant deliberately to pull the system out of the basin. And the simplest one, behavioral activation. Just go do something, anything rewarding, even something small. A walk, a meal with a friend, an old hobby. Each rewarding act activates the medial orbitofrontal cortex, which reciprocally inhibits the lateral one. Translation: rewards turn the alarm down. 5 different therapies. 5 very different mechanisms. One unifying picture. They are all, in one way or another, knocking your brain out of a stuck attractor in the lateral orbitofrontal cortex. which is why a good clinician will often combine them. The drugs and stimulation move the brain chemistry. The therapy and behavior change the inputs. You attack the loop from both sides. One important note before we move on. If you or someone you love is in this place, please talk to a doctor or a therapist. The science is real. The treatments are real. And nobody should be trying to walk out of this attractor alone. 2 short scenes before we close out, both about what makes humans, specifically the species that gets depressed. You have in your head 2 different ways of deciding what to do. One is the old route, the one we share with every other vertebrate. Information about a reward comes in. Your orbitofrontal cortex says, yes, want. Your motor system reaches for it. Fast, automatic, mostly unconscious. Your genes wrote this route. It is the selfish gene route. It is mostly the route that runs your day-to-day. But humans have a second route, the reasoning route. The slow, sentence-by-sentence, if this, then that route, running through your prefrontal cortex and your language system. This route can override the first one. Your gene route says, eat the cake. Your reasoning route reads the medical journal, considers your weight, considers your future, and says, no. You don't always win this argument, but you sometimes do. And here is the dark side of the same trick. The reasoning route is exactly what gets caught in the depression loop. The same powerful language system that lets you defer gratification, plan 10 years out, decline a cigarette, is the same system that, locked in feedback with your non-reward map, can replay a loss for months. No other animal can do this. No other animal can be depressed quite the way humans can. We are paying, in part, the price of having a mind powerful enough to argue with itself. And one last thing, because if you've watched this far, you have probably been waiting for the obvious question. Why does any of this feel like anything? A neuron in your lateral orbitofrontal cortex fires. Fine. But why isn't that just a tiny electrical event, like a transistor flipping in a computer? Why is there a hurt? Why is there a you on the inside of all this, suffering or rejoicing or yawning? This is what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. And I want to be honest, nobody has solved it, including Rawls. But he does offer a clue. His theory is that consciousness, in its richest sense, is what it's like for a brain to think about its own thoughts, to run not just a plan, but a plan about the plan, to check itself, to debug itself. A monkey, in his view, lives close to the moment. A human, with our recursive, sentence-shaped minds, can reflect, and the reflection is, somehow, what bolts feeling onto the underlying computation. If he's right, then the same recursive language system that gives you consciousness is exactly the system that gets ensnared in the depression loop. The price of being self-aware is partly the price of being able to suffer about yourself. It is a strange thought, and it's the last one I'll leave you with before the outro. 3 things to take with you. 1. Emotions are not the truth about the world. They are your genes' signals about what they have decided is worth caring about. Joy and sadness are receipts. 2. Depression is not a chemical imbalance, and it is not weakness. It is a specific circuit in a specific patch of cortex, doing what it was built to do, and getting stuck. There is geography to your sadness. It has an address. 3. Everything that helps, every drug, every therapy, every long walk, every small reward you allow yourself to receive, is in the end a way of knocking that circuit loose. The loop is breakable. People walk out of it every day. The book this video draws from is Edmund T's The Brain, Emotion, and Depression. If anything here landed, the book goes deeper and is genuinely accessible. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourself. And if you're struggling, please talk to someone.